We're back with documentary photographer Daniel Milnor as he discusses mistakes that he made early in his career.
All right, mistakes. And mistakes come in many sizes. The first mistake I made, this was kind of hilarious. I was at UT Austin. I was almost ready to graduate, and I studied photojournalism, right? Because I didn't take the time to look around at the rest of the course offerings. I didn't realize there was a major called photography that was in the art department. So I end up in photojournalism because I think it's the only thing. And photojournalism is all about rules and about pseudo ethics and what you can do and can't do, and you're framing things, and everything is very linear and structured and very journalistic, which is fine. And it's interesting, and I do love journalism, so it fit me pretty well. But I should have studied photography. I should have studied photography and still done documentary work, but I should have gone in the art department, because the art department, what I figured out about a semester before I graduated, was the art department was wide open. The art department was about conceptual, put it this way, conceptual work was not frowned upon. So I could have still done documentary work, but I would have had so much more freedom in the photography department than I did in the photojournalism department.
Yeah.
And journalism was already starting to die, the newspaper world, and I just didn't know. I was so rushed. I didn't look around, and I met someone in the photography department, and they told me about the kind of project they were working on, and I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I shot myself in the foot by taking this, journalism path, which is pretty much on the way out. And it's all about rules and structure and this and that. And I could have had this wide open blank canvas in front of me. So that to me was a shock and definite mistake, because studying photojournalism narrowed my mindset about photography. And it took me 20 plus years to unwind that mindset and realize that things like art photography and conceptual photography are not foo-foo styles of photography. They are incredibly interesting and in some ways far more transcendent today than photojournalism is. And so that to me was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that.
All right, mistake number one.
But mistake number two was I did not collaborate with anyone until 30 years later. Why on earth I was not collaborating with writers is beyond me, or designer, anything. I mean, I just didn't. I was so myopic about my own work and my own career. And we've talked about this before. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we talked, is I became a better human being the moment I quit being a professional photographer, because I was able to take my foot off the gas and stop thinking about myself and take a look around at everyone else and say, hey, what's Mary doing? What's Sarah doing? And look around and go, oh, hey, maybe I should have reached out to these folks. I didn't collaborate. That is a monumental mistake, because so much of the best work I see is collaboration. Yeah. And the simple fact is I'm never going to be a world-class writer or designer or book layout person. And so if I'm going to make something world-class, I better partner with somebody who is.
Boy, that is so true, Dan.
Yeah.
No, it's knowing. I mean, honestly, my whole career has been based on collaboration, and that's how you and I met. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have reached out to you. But that point about working with others, I don't know how to design a book. I'm not a designer.
I don't either.
I don't even want to try. But I know I can collaborate with a designer. They pick the font, they pick the layout on the page, all these things that could go unnoticed, that, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show, it makes the difference between a really professional piece of work and something that's like, what's this, right?
Point number three, I did not listen to that inner voice in my head for the first probably 10 years of my career. There was that little, some would call it a devil, some would call it an angel on my shoulder that was just shaking its head at me and saying, you're not doing what you know you're supposed to do. You're doing what other people expect of you. And so I spent 10 years of my career shooting pictures for other people, the first 10 years, and I didn't shoot my pictures because I shot what I thought was expected of me. And that was just I can't say it was a waste of 10 years, because I made my living as a photographer and I did a lot of assignments and I got some accolades and praise from people that said, hey, you're doing a really good job, whatever. But in my head, I was like, this is not really who I am. This is not what, and when that haunts you for 10 years, that's a long time to marinate with those thoughts, right? When you're sitting alone at night. And what really did it for me was 1997. So I shot from about 1990 to about 1997, and I was shooting other people's work. And I looked at my portfolio at the end of 1997, and there was not a single image in it that was mine. Even though I shot those pictures, and those pictures ran in magazines and for corporate clients and whatever, I looked at it and I said, this is not even my work. Like, I don't even like this. I don't identify with this. These are not good photographs. I'm getting all this work, but they suck. And so I quit. And when I quit and took 4 years of working for Kodak, that was the first time I realized, all right, I finally figured out what I'm doing. I finally figured out when I pick up a camera who I am, and I should have done that from day one. And what that would have done was prolonged the difficulty of making a living, but it would have made me a better photographer. And I would have had probably more of a portfolio from that era, because the first 10 years of my career, there's nothing left because nothing was mine. Yeah. And so I should have listened to that voice, and I didn't. So I hear that voice talks to me all the time now. Some would say that's a problem, but I like it. We've come to peace with one another.
All right.
All right. The last mistake. I did not diversify my knowledge inside the creative industry. So again, until probably 2010, which sounds crazy, 2010 was the first time I started looking around at the design community, at the illustration community, at the art world, at the street art world. I didn't know anything about street art. I thought those people were like, they never want to talk about their work. They're like isolationists and they're difficult. I couldn't have been more wrong. I was just like, oh my God, what have I been doing? So I didn't do that until 2010. And 2010 was the second time and the last time, the permanent time, that I quit photography. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to be a photographer anymore. And and with the Blurb, and really I have to blame Blurb for this. Blurb exposed me to all these people. And I was down in Australia and I went to a festival called Analog Digital, which is I think they do it every year or maybe every 2 years. At the time, it was based out of Brisbane. And the founder, Matt, is just awesome. He's this young Aussie guy that's super talented as a designer, and he created this festival. And I went to a second creative festival called Semi-Permanent. And these were short, like 1 or 2 day, very intensive, creative professional events that had very little to do with photography, but they had everything to do with the industry of creativity itself. So there was photography, there was magazines, there were designers, illustrators, artists, and street artists. And so all of a sudden, as a photographer, I'm thrown into this creative festival. There's 1,000 people in attendance. You know, the halls are packed, and I'm up giving a talk about photography, and the next person, like Monster Children magazine, was there. You had all these famous street artists that had come in. And my first thought was, I am such an idiot. Like, how did I miss these people and these industries? Because we're all connected. All of them are connected. And I was, again, like, oh, just going to do this, just going to push the button all the time, just going to make pictures all the time. And I got into that crowd at Analog Digital and Semi-Permanent. And again, I was kind of like, I'm probably the least interesting person here. These folks are like turning my head inside out. And so that was another major mistake, that I did not diversify inside. When we talked earlier, I talked about being more than a photographer in your personal life.
Yes.
You know, whatever it is you do in your personal life, but also internally in the creative space, professionally. For example, I'm doing this zine collaboration, AG23, and my collaboration partner is Beyond Clothing out of Seattle, and Beyond's has 2 or 3 people, and I only know a few people at the company. I know the director, and then I know some of their art department folks. And when I talk to them in the art department, I feel like the guy who doesn't know anything. I feel like the guy who didn't prepare for the test, because they're referencing things, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know who that is. I don't know about that print process. I don't know about stats, color separation. I don't know this and that. And I'm like, God, I have so much homework to do. Yeah, I know about photography. I know how to make good pictures if I'm given the chance to do it, but there is so much more to know. And holy cow, look at what I do for a living with Blurb.
Yeah.
in terms of knowing software and color space and page design and typography and all these things that I just ignored for almost 30 years. I somehow found a way to ignore this stuff, and not smart.
We hope that you enjoyed that video. If you did, please give it a like and leave a comment. We love to hear from you. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you can know when all of our future videos come out. And finally, be sure to get out there and capture your own images of life.